The session today was created for CCNs that provide services in correctional facilities. And by that, we mean um, those programs who have the grant, the corrections grant, as well as the programs who are not sub-grant recipients for the corrections education grant, but just have a satellite site or serving a local detention center in their area. The purpose of today's meeting is here. Today, we hope to review some of the adult education activities in corrections facilities and detention centers, and we'll look at some data to do that. We're going to review required and authorized activities for corrections education grant. We're going to identify some career service activities that are relevant to participants in a corrections ed program. And then we're going to assist programs with implementation and monitoring of career services in the correction facilities. So South Carolina has some required activities for corrections ed grants. South Carolina requires that all subgrantees provide adult education and literacy activities and that they provide career pathway activities. These program requirements come straight from WIOA Title II, Section 225B, where we describe that the funds are to be used for the cost of educational programs for criminal offenders in Corrections Institute and for other institutionalized individuals, including academic programs for adult ed and literacy activities, special ed, secondary school credit, and in South Carolina, we're only doing GED, IET, career pathways, concurrent enrollment, peer tutoring, transition to reentry initiatives, and other post-release services with the goal of reducing recidivism. But again, where that list is concerned, South Carolina has required that there's adult ed leading to GED attainment and that the folks in corrections facilities are introduced to career pathways. It doesn't have to be an IET. So just looking at who's being served by the adult ed grant. We have who's being served in correction facilities with adult ed grants, both corrections and just adult ed services. We have 5 providers of the corrections grant. Beaufort, you're here. Aiken County Adult Ed, PUSD, Horry County Adult Ed, and Sumter County Adult Ed are all subgrant recipients. We have 6 additional programs that have provided services in corrections facilities in the 21-22 program year. And the only data that's being shared today is from the 21-22 program year. I didn't do a deep dive for this. As you know, we're still the subgrantees are that information would stay static in the sense of the number of participants, but on the adult ed side, that information can fluctuate. Some programs have satellite sites at detention facilities. And based on what's happening in the local area, um, especially since going back to having the state reopen after COVID, these numbers could change. So some of this information was pulled from our adult ed program directory, and then some of it was pulled from LACES with data. And what we noticed is that there were programs who had a detention facility site as one of the satellite sites on the 21-22 adult ed program directory. But when we went to pull the data, we had sites that didn't have a satellite site listed, adult ed programs that didn't have a satellite site listed in the program directory that were offering services in corrections facilities. So the numbers that we have there is a combination of both of those things. We found that some who were on the program directory is having a satellite site didn't actually have data for it that year, and that'll be reflected in another slide as we move forward. But Ann Stone's here, Florence, is an example of a program that has those activities. Charleston County Adult Ed has activities in a detention center as well. Lexington One Adult Ed had services in a detention facility. And there are several others, but there were about 6 programs in total. And what we're looking at is we're pulling best practices. We can pull best practices from any of the activities that are going on in adult ed with those adult ed services that would help strengthen the corrections ed project or just help us to better serve the adults who are in correctional facilities. So again, I just went through this briefly in the prior slide, the corrections ed permissible activities. Now these are listed in the federal grant, but these are not activities that we've required you to do on the adult ed side, but they are really good services to offer to folk who are in correctional facilities. Special ed is determined by an eligible agency. The high school equivalency diploma, a preparation for it, IET, concurrent enrollment in adult ed and in a training program, peer tutoring, and I'm sure I am sure that PUSD has some implementation of that model of peer tutoring, and transition to reentry initiatives and other post-release services with the goal of reducing recidivism. We'll talk more about that as we move forward in an additional slide, because that may be where we see some of your partnership activity happening and where we see CCN services making a difference to help support individuals who are in a corrections ed program. So here is some of the data for the services that we saw with the Corrections Ed grant. This should be no shock to any of us here that the program that is kind of leading the way with participants in corrections education activities is PUSD. I mean, that is the grant that they have for operating their facilities, and so they did serve 800 students this year. But what is reflected on this grant, in this data, are participants for each of the corrections programs, average instructional hours, and then the career services that have been provided to those participants in the corrections facilities. And so in terms of programs that are here, what we noticed with the participation in the career services is that while you have a population here that is being served in the corrections facilities, they have a significant amount of hours that they could have contact with a CCN or some collaborative activity could be going on to support career planning and career development, but we see that number trailed, that we don't see a strong correlation between the hours that they're in adult ed and the number of career services that they are receiving. So what we hope to do today is kind of just put it on everybody's radar once again for those activities to start happening there, because I think we do have some time to make that kind of contact with the students in the correctional facilities. I'm gonna look at some more data. And these are not grant recipients. These are other adult ed programs who are providing services in the corrections facilities. And you'll see Anderson Adult Ed served corrections this year. Charleston did, but a couple programs, like I said, that were in the adult ed directory as having adult detention center as a satellite site did make contact in the 21-22 years. So that would have been Chester, Darlington, Dorchester. I didn't find anything for Florence, Lawrence County Adult Ed, Marlboro, Spartanburg, and Williamsburg. So it's expected. I guess everybody's trying to get back in the full swing of operations with some of their partnerships and satellite sites. And again, these folks aren't required to do that to provide satellite services because they're not corrections grant recipients, but they do have some partnerships that lend to that activity. And you see here a significant amount of instructional hours here with the programs that are making contact. So Anderson's got 3 participants with a significant amount of hours. Charleston's at least get into the 40-hour mark where we could get a post-test gain for some of those students potentially. So it's Edgefield who has the Federal Corrections Institute there, and I know they work specifically, well, highly in the Work Keys area. Kershaw Adult Ed program had 72. The average instructional hours for their program is 72. Lexington have one student, but it seemed like they stayed for a really long time, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. And then Richland One, who is serving Willow Gray Opportunity Center, Opportunity School, is considered for LACES purposes and for reporting purposes to fall in that correctional facility population of students. And we couldn't do an average of an average, so you don't see an orange bar in the totals for individual instructional hours for these programs that are listed here. But you do see they had about 265 participants across those programs this year. And 153 career services. And it looks like Charleston was a program that kind of is leading the way with career services in that area. So we'll look at some career services that we see offered. So as a reminder, just like the AFLA grant, the corrections grant has a requirement for an adult education staff member specifically to provide career services or career planning to people who are in an adult education program. So we have that CCN requirement. If you are a corrections education program or if you're an AFLA program, in both of these grants, we have required that the provider have a CCN or a position on staff that is responsible for career planning and development of students. And so just looking at some of the CCN activities that have happened in correctional facilities for this program year, that it was a total of 429 services. But we also have something that we've kind of required as a baseline for all programs who have CCNs. We call these baseline services or required services, meaning that once a person becomes a participant or they're working towards becoming a participant in adult education programs, they should have contact with a college and career navigator or a staff member on site who provides career development services, and those required services are the career interest inventory or a goal setting session. Employment preparation is not required, but we can talk about why that's important as we move forward. Information about the CRC, which we understand to be on hold at this point, but again, we have facilities that are operating, we have adult ed providers that are operating in facilities where their federal inmates are housed, and they're working towards earning a work keys because they may not necessarily be a South Carolina resident. They may have come from another state, and we know that the NCRC is a nationally recognized career readiness certificate, whereas WIN doesn't have the doesn't have the steam in a lot of states that the NCRC does as far as job profiling and recognition by employers. But we have so much activity and information about the CRC because we have programs who are operating in federal facilities and they're only doing work keys with the students. Another piece of required information that we've asked CCNs to provide to students or those who become participants is information about supportive services. And so we have a CNR code for that, that is linkages to community services. And that includes information they're sharing about core programs, voc rehab, um, Title I or Title III programs that may be available to participants or may be needed once those inmates are released from the facility. For example, people may want to connect with the American Job Center or the SC Work Center to get assistance with federal bonding because there may be a special, a second chance employee at that point, and the employers that are open to hiring recently incarcerated, ex-offenders would potentially have more interest if they knew or if they were partnered with a core program for that federal bonding. That's a type of employer security for hiring ex-offenders. And so if CCNs are aware of this information and they have it to present, these are the kind of services that would benefit an inmate in terms of linkages to community services. Voc rehab considers long-term imprisonment or long-term, imprisonment is the best word I could say, being institutionalized for a long term, in some cases, eligibility requirement for vocational rehabilitation services. And so I'm not sure how many CCNs are aware of that information, but Voc Rehab has a program, an initiative specifically in the state for ex-offenders and getting them trained and ready to re-enter into the workforce if they've had long-term incarceration. So these are the type of linkages that we're talking about would be helpful to folk who are in corrections facilities. But then in this report from last year, we had one service provided that was documented in LACES. And then educational testing. And so because educational testing is not a required service, it's a supportive service. But this is when a program pays for the secondary school diploma completion. And so that's a good service to offer, if your program can, to folks who are in a corrections facility. But one of the things that we do call a required service here is introducing career pathways. Now, on the AFLA side here, we're talking about IET, but corrections isn't required to have an IET. We're just asking you, in terms of required services, to introduce them to some sort of career pathway that is an option for them after they are released and they're returning to the workforce. It helps with the reducing recidivism, because it helps with employment outcomes. And, sometimes people are released with parole or probation. They have fees that are due and associated with it. If they can't work, they can't pay those fees that are associated with it. They might find themselves back in the loop coming back to prison, because they're not aware of the resources that are available to them in terms of career pathways and jobs, industry credentials, certifications that they can earn, things of that nature. So we do ask that the CCNs kind of have some information on career pathway options that are available for in their local area for folks who are in correction facilities. Oh, that was a lot. Maybe I should take a pause right here before I go into the next slide. It asks, is everybody good so far? Am I talking too much? Do we have any questions about the required services yet? What we're suggesting here is that for the prison population, you could either do a career interest inventory or goal setting for a required service, either or. Present information about the CRC when we are offering CRCs again, or if you have an individual license with work keys, you definitely are welcome to move forward with CRC information in that way. Provide information on community service agencies, including the ones that align to other WIO core partners, and that you introduce the program's career pathway. Any questions right now? Okay, hearing none. Going to move forward. Gonna keep on rolling. All right, another South Carolina. This information also coming from 225 of 225B of the Corrections Education Grant information. And it says corrections education sub-grantees must give priority to certain individuals who are likely to leave the correctional institution within 5 years of participation in the program. And so, Dr. Muriel, is this your first round in the corrections ed grant as a recipient, or did you get it last year also?
I received it last year also.
Okay, so you might be our veteran technician in this area when it comes to operating with the grant, focusing services on those who have 5 years of participation in the program or less. How are you able to identify who those inmates are that have 5 or less years left on their sentence?
I don't know that have 5 or less years left on their sentence. That's you asking me?
Yes. How you all identify those potential?
Because I did ask Mr. Grabowski, and I would have to get back with Ms. Aiken or Ms. Watson, because sometimes the inmates come in and they're there for maybe like less than a month, and he will be working with them, and the next thing you know, the next few days they're going to be transferred out. So I would have to follow up with them, how we can find that out. Yeah, because I don't know whether, I guess it's whatever the charges the inmate has will determine that. I think that has a lot to do with it, whatever their charge is. And I don't know whether they'll be able to tell us that or not. So I'll follow up with Ms. Watson and Ms. Aiken to find out that.
Thank you. I wanted to see, I was hoping we had some experience with that. I have a suggestion for how it could work, but I wanted to see what was actually happening in the program, because the information that I'm presenting to you is coming from the grant, is not coming from personal experience in that setting, and what the documentation is and what access you have to that information, how you collaborate with other staff members who are in the facility to get that information. I do have a suggestion, but I didn't want to overstep. I wanted to see what was actually happening, because it's probably a lot more technical than some of the things I'll share with you.
Okay.
So that pool of people that we're describing with the 5 years or less is kind of going to be our target audience for providing career services in the corrections facility. We have some data considerations that are woven kind of into the practice that we want to pick up and the things that we want to start doing here. And some of these people are going to hit table 5. And there's specific things that will make, and y'all know table 5 is reporting employment in the second and fourth quarter after exit, and reporting entering into post-secondary ed or training either within the program year or within 1 year of exiting the program. That's big old table 5. And so because some of these folks will hit table 5, we think the best and most efficient way to serve is to know who those folks are who hit table 5. And then we know that by virtue of this 5-year rule, 5 years or less on their sentence, we will we can be strategic about how we use CCN services or career development and career planning services in a facility without it feeling like or being a waste of money, for lack of a better word, or a waste of funds. We want to use it in the best way possible. Um, but those participants will be those who are still enrolled in LACES when they exit adult ed programs. Um, so say you have somebody who doesn't complete their GED, who doesn't have that secondary credential gain when they leave your program. Maybe they do get transferred to another facility. Um, and I guess we would call them a non-completer, but we would consider them somebody who's left adult ed. They would still be enrolled in your service as a non-completer, because you know you have that 90-day gap in service before they before LACES will consider them exited. But we're talking about folks who hadn't hit the time period for them to be exited in LACES, but they didn't complete. Maybe they were transferred, they didn't earn a GED at that point. But they will be potentially released. They'll go into another facility, or they are just released altogether from jail or from prison at that point. Those folk are going to hit Table 5, based on that release date. That is a group that you're probably going to need to have follow-up with, to the extent possible. So that's a group of people we want to focus providing career services for. That group is who we want to focus on. And again, what's important here is if they're released, so they go to another facility or they get out of jail completely, while they are still enrolled in your adult ed program as a participant, so they haven't earned the GED, they still are basic skills deficient, or those kind of things, that group of people are going to populate the denominator for Table 5, so they're included in the big blanket of students in that denominator, whether they have an outcome or not. This group we're going to have to follow up with. So we want to focus again, the career services there. If they complete and earn a GED, but say they're not released till 3 years later or 4 years later, they won't impact your Table 5 at all. So because their release date is so far down the line, it would be a good practice, but to have them receive career services, but it won't be as effective, I guess, where the tables and the performance is concerned. So what is actually, I guess, running the show here? What's actually running the show here for this group of students is their anticipated or expected release date. And every one of the inmates that are served in the facility should have some information about when their expected release date is or when their anticipated release date is. And what should happen, and what we think is the best practice, is that they're sharing this information with you in some format. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be something that's immediately put in the LACES, because I think it impacts the data in a way that I'm not sure about yet. But at least if it's shared in a written format, maybe like on an intake form, not our state intake form, or something that the CCN is using specifically to identify the students who are coming into adult ed, into that classroom space at the correction facility, this information is going to give you what you need to plan your CCN services. So I hope there are strong partnerships here with the staff at the corrections facilities, and that you all can share that information between each other, or that the inmate themselves will share it with you. But what would be also significant in helping you to identify that target audience is maybe walking through these questions in your planning and design of the corrections education and CCN services within the facility. If the target population, does the target population have someone else in the facility to discuss goal setting with them before they attend adult ed? So is the organizational structure such that there's a guard or a education liaison inside of the prison that helps them get set up for post-secondary ed training or adult ed if they need it, or a training program if they need it? And if so, are you collaborating with that staff member um, to get your referrals into adult ed? And if you are, they may have that information that we're asking for about the anticipated release date and may be able to share it with you before they come into adult ed. An additional question is, can your program staff collaborate? The adult ed teacher that's on site in the corrections facility or with other staff members at the prison to deliver services to the target population and the shared data. So in some cases, your program may not have the CCN go into the facility, but if the teacher is there and the teacher is comfortable being there, can she provide career development, at least the required services, the goal setting, information about career pathways, information about the CRC, linkages to community services? Can that teacher collaborate with the CCN and deliver those services on site? And then they be reported back to your CCN and put in the laces as well to show that that is actually happening for the individuals in corrections ed. And I'm anticipating that there are some good relationships here between the adult ed staff, the teacher, and the CCN where this is possible. Anyway, I hope that it is the case. I hope pretty strongly that it is the case. Just things to think about as you're designing that process. It looked like I saw you unmute for a second, Dr. Morrell. Did you have something that you wanted to share?
Well, I just wanted to say there is a good relationship with our teacher, Mr. Grabowski, and the employees at the Beaufort County Detention Center, Ms. Watson and Ms. Aiken. Excellent relationship. And also the CCN, she will be going over there or contacting them too to develop a relationship with them.
Good stuff to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So we have just talked about the service offerings. What should the CCN services look like when we're working with folks inside of detention or corrections facilities? What should we provide? And so we should, at that intake to adult ed, have a way to identify what their goals are. And I'm going to share something that I developed with you all and hope that, I mean, you can take it, you can use it. I hope you use it, but maybe you already have something. But it's a way to identify what their goals are that are relevant to the services that CCN offers. So we're gonna put that out for you, a intake goal setting sheet. In terms of workshops or sessions that are happening with the students in the correction facilities, SMART goals are extremely important. That SMART goal framework, it's extremely important to folks who are in a corrections facility. We know that people, just based on research, who set goals are 90% more likely to achieve those goals because they had that process of setting them. So SMART goals is the most recognizable framework for goal setting that's out there. And we know that there's a lot of familiarity with it. Teaching the students how to distinguish between important and irrelevant goals and how that goal setting process interacts with their decision making or choice making skills. They'll need that for work readiness. But in that process, participants kind of work through the entire process of establishing a key goal, and it could be education, it could be financial, it could be career, career or work related. It could be breaking a bad habit, whatever the thing is, and then breaking it down into measurable objectives and specific activities. And the entire step-by-step process of setting and achieving goals should be taught in that SMART goals framework. So, career pathway options should also be made available to the students, especially because it will help them improve the technical skills they need for the workplace. We kind of, with the GED process, have the academic skills covered, but where the CCN is concerned, we're looking for them to create awareness of technical skills needed for different jobs and what jobs are available, if for second chance employees, that kind of information, so that they can start, just like our students who are not incarcerated are having an opportunity to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And because this is one of those required activities, they'll need, in a lot of cases, some technical skills for certain jobs, and want to make sure they have that information presented to them while they're attending adult ed. If they so desire, it should be available to them. And again, they would essentially deliver, the CCNs would essentially deliver this information in the same way that is provided to other students who are not in corrections facilities. So maybe your process is you actually have pamphlets, or it might be hard to get a college rep. I'm not sure what the relationship is here. It might be hard to get a college rep to go into a corrections facility and talk about it, or it could be fairly easy depending on that organization and its structure with bringing outside personnel in. But if you have flyers or handouts or career ladders printed so that they can see that process from a secondary credential up through a training certificate, a 2-year or 4-year degree, jobs that are associated with it, things of that nature. If you have it in print form, this is optimal. We can get that to them and discuss it, or you can have your CCN or teacher talk with them about it at that local facility. I don't know what restrictions there might be with access to internet. That's why, I took a pause there for a moment, recognizing that it may not be the same process that you have on site. Maybe you do career exploration and research using a computer at the house, at your main site with the students, and that might not be possible in some of the facilities that you all attend. But if you have it in print form, that works just as well, as long as the CCN can be there and answer questions about those career pathways. What's next? Soft skills, the big one. So if you're looking at this target population that's going to hit the employment outcomes soon and very soon because of their anticipated release date from the facility, there are some skills that just lead to work readiness and job readiness. And just pulled out a couple of those soft skills: team building, problem solving, communication, and digital literacy. Just to highlight a few. Now there are some that we focus on as a state, or at least we are working towards getting a soft skills credential recognized by employers for the state. And some of those things are not here, like professionalism, time management, things of that nature. There are some that are here, which is team building, problem solving, communication, and digital literacy. And I know we're doing a lot with digital literacy. I don't know how feasible this is for all programs to accomplish, but digital literacy would probably be like icing on the cake here. It's not a required service because we don't know what they have access to, what you all will have access to, and any red tape that you would have to go through to get that information or that type of learning to students. But it is a skill, a 21st century skill that is needed. But problem solving and choice making sessions, that's going to be extremely important to work readiness in the case of students who have been incarcerated for a long time. There'll be a need to know, even folk who aren't incarcerated for a long time need to be able to work on a team, need to be able to communicate well with other members of a team, because they're 21st century skills. You need them to be successful at work. We do a lot of collaboration and collaborative learning, collaborative activities at work, and its implications, though implications for team building and communication, they have career and social elements attached to them. So um, it's just very needed. I can't go into enough detail about why it is needed because we didn't. The purpose of this session is not to go over soft skills and what they are, but just to kind of get you to focus on what the needs may be in these situations in terms of work readiness and career navigator services. And then linkages to community services is something that's also important. Reason being, we've kind of highlighted in the grant a specific activity for you all to focus on, which is having the partnerships. We asked for that in the final annual report for these grant activities, and in consideration for partnerships that have been developed to support in the transition from prison into work. Again, it could be collaboratively done with folk who are already staff members at the prison facility. Maybe they've already worked through some of those relationships and have those connections for the inmates, so maybe they don't. Maybe they'll be receiving them for the first time through your CCN. But we specifically asked for partnership activities in the final annual report for corrections ed grant and for consideration for just overall. And so we're looking in this area to how the community agencies and services that you're linked to are supporting corrections ed students. And in one way, we take it in a narrative form. I think the final annual report takes it in narrative form. But in terms of the CCN, we take it in the CNAR form, the CNAR form with just using this code as you present that information to the students in the facility. So here are some strategies that I think would be helpful for you in serving. That intake checklist for college and career navigator services. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second, and go over how you might use it at the local level. It's not complicated at all. In fact, I've already made it available on the CCN Live Binder, and that's where I'm going to pull it up from when I stop sharing this screen and show you that checklist of services. But your CCN also has the option of printing packets and sending print material with those services we just described, the required services, to the teacher, with your classroom teacher, so that she can disseminate the information or go over the information with her. But there's an opportunity there for collaboration with the teacher through on-site professional development, Dr. Morrell, with having your CCN collaborate with the classroom teacher and going over how these documents should be used, because your teacher may be a subject matter expert with a certain academic skill, but not so much with the career development process. And so he may have information that he's not sure how to use. And so making some time for the CCN and that teacher to work together if the teacher will deliver that information, or if the CCN is going to, you don't need to. But you're definitely welcome to have it in print form, have the teacher familiar with it, and have the teacher disseminate it and go over it with the students that are on site. Collaboration with correction staff, and this is probably most significant where PUSD is concerned, because I understand that there's a network of staff members that are involved in education planning and career planning for inmates. So you may have somebody that just works with the post-secondary ed or training programs, and somebody who's just over a vocational training program that's on site at the facility. Not sure what the setup is in Beaufort County, not sure what it is in Florence County, but if it's designed anything like that, where there's vocational training on site for corrections ed students, if there is an opportunity for them to participate in post-secondary ed, it would be helpful for you as a CCN to learn who the staff positions are there that are covering those services, and if they'd be willing to collaborate with you in any way to share that information so that you can say, hey, they do have career pathway options available. This is what is covered. And these are some of the things that I help with collaborating with that staff member to get those services to adult ed participants. And then collaboration with partnership programs. Earlier, you heard me share about voc rehab and how that might be of interest to somebody who's been incarcerated for a long time. Maybe they have already done 3 or 4 years or a whole year. It covered the majority of their sentence, and as they're getting closer to release, they've decided to come to adult ed. In the last year of their sentence, they're decided to come to adult ed. The linkages with partnership programs is going to be like VR with the long-term incarceration. It's going to be vital to helping them to make the next steps to reduce that recidivism, and because they're going to populate Table 5, depending on that release date, to help them meet the employment in second and fourth quarter after exit, or enter into a training, a post-secondary ed program after exit as well. In some cases, the VR programs are considered training. So there's a little working through of the definitions, but again, it's going to be extremely important for the CCN to know what options are available through those core programs for folk who've been incarcerated. And so I have a couple resources here. We share these slides out. I've also put them on the CCN live binder. Let's see if I can click through. I can click through, but I have to stop sharing my screen to keep talking about it. But 2 of the resources that have been made available to help this process are on the CCN web binder, and you have the live binder, you have the links here. One is straight to the live binder, but there's a new tab for corrections education services. And then the corrections education resource tab, we have Minnesota State CareerWise resources for ex-offenders. It's specifically designed to ex-offenders for assessment, for training programs. Glad someone else has done the legwork and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just get to it, browse through what is there, see what would be a good resource for us, familiarize ourselves with it, and use it where it's applicable for the students who are in corrections facilities. And then we also have that College and Career Navigator Services checklist that I was talking to you about a little earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this screen. And stop sharing so I can show you what's on the CCN website. Alrighty. So on the College and Career Navigator resources website, you have corrections education resources here. And this first tab, it automatically opens to CareerWise for ex-offenders. And it's help with career planning for people with a criminal conviction. There's that realm of knowing yourself, the self-knowledge realm, where you can do a career interest inventory and assessment. You have the option here, explore jobs, create a plan and set goals, and you'll find a SMART goals framework in there. Expand your skills means find a training program or education program that would help with that process, and then tips for finding a job and managing your career. Browse through it at your discretion and at your leisure. Now, before we leave, I want to make sure I put the link in the chat box. And then the CCN checklist. We don't want to do anything with Adobe right now. But this is kind of a guide to help the navigator know which services, because we can't force everybody to be involved in every navigator services. But when we talk about maximizing time and being efficient with the resources in terms of who's on site and what we can do at the time in the present, this checklist should help the navigator to prepare, or the teacher and navigator to collaborate to prepare something for that college and career planning with the students on site. So you see a little welcome message here. We're asking for the opportunity to help support that participant in their education and career choices. We take their name on this checklist and that all important date, anticipated release date. Now, if they share this on this intake form, you don't have to go back and put it into the LACES system, but it is a quick reference, something hands-on that can be put in a folder at the detention facility or something that the CCN can see and the teacher can see and say, hey, this is our target population. These are the 5-year group. This group's getting out this year. Let's get a plan for getting them the information that's going to help with this transition. If we have that on this sheet, I think it'll be a good resource for strategically serving the inmates. And it's a simple checklist. The first box here about like and help identifying career interests is asking, if they check this box, a CCN would know, hey, they would like a career interest inventory. They would like that assessment part to happen. Assess my career skills, match my skills to jobs that are available. So whether you're using a printed, well, if you're using a computer, of course, you could use SCOAS or My Next Move, or you can use Minnesota CareerWise. But if they don't have that option, having the CCN print a form of career interest inventory, maybe the one that does Holland codes, get their 3 Holland codes and show them what those careers lead to, what it says about what jobs would be best for them, or where their personality would be a good fit for certain jobs and careers. That checking this box would let the CCN know, do a career interest inventory with them. Again, one of the required service, but if they don't check it, no pressure there to do a career interest inventory. This sheet in itself could be used as a form of goal setting, right? Because they say, hey, this is what I'm here to work on. Check, 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 check. And if this is done, they can at least go and put into LACES, hey, I've done goal setting. What's it? CNAR, EMCG, career goals. I've done a goal setting session with them. I know what their goals are for CCN services at the detention centers. They would check the second box and the CCN would know to share information on career pathway options that are available for ex-offenders, for training programs that are available in the area for ex-offenders, because not every program, depending on whether it's a certification and it requires a background check that they can't pass, will be appropriate for that student. So CCNs need to be familiar with what that looks like in the local area and have the information to share in case students check this box. I would like information on eliminating employment barriers. That's letting you know, hey, supportive services. So who can help me with that? Who's a supportive service provider in the area? And then you would create those linkages to whether it's VR, SC Works, a WIOA youth program servicer, an adult program servicer, whoever the partners are. Sticking goals, of course, is going to let learning to set and stick goals is going to let the CCN know, hey, I can come and do a SMART goal session. Or the teacher know, hey, I can come and do a SMART goal session with this group. Or some people want SMART goals. Information about the CRC is kind of self-explanatory. Information about industry certifications and certificates could also be used to present career pathway options depending on who's providing that certification or certificate, but it is a way of doing career pathway planning. And so the CNR code that's associated with it, a college information session or training information session, would be applicable if they're asking about certifications. And if they're asking about improving work readiness skills, you'll notice that all of the skills listed here are soft skills, and with the exception of professionalism, it's the soft skills that were listed on the slide we showed you earlier. So communication, problem solving. We don't have digital literacy listed as digital literacy, just computer skills, but team building also. And again, here are additional support needs and some partnerships that could help support what a student that's in a correctional facility may need. Mental health information, Voc Rehab, the Fatherhood and Family Coalition. I'm not sure if it's called by that name down in Beaufort County. But that program is essentially aimed at there's an element of it that's aimed at reducing recidivism by helping fathers who come out of corrections facilities build relationships with their children and get them jobs so that they're not going back to jail for unpaid child support, things of that nature. Kind of mitigates that recidivism process there. And other community services, and they could describe those below, or sometimes they have personal development goals that might be in our wheelhouse of services in adult ed. Like if they need money financial management, is this a group to have financial literacy classes with? Maybe it's embedded in the math, some of the math that you do. But I know some adult ed programs have partnerships just for financial literacy. And so, like I said, the final annual report asks about those partnerships that support corrections activity. If this applies to your program, I mean, yeah, it's not a requirement to have financial literacy, but maybe additional support, parent education. Not every program here is going to have family literacy services, but some do. So that would be a good way to loop in family literacy activity to support that goal, or quitting a bad habit. And that could come back up again in soft skills like problem solving, and give it some real life context, or goal setting. Give it some real life context for them. That's all I wanted to share about this sheet. So I'm gonna stop presenting. And my final slide was for Q&A.